In last week's episode of this show, which was episode 397, I discussed setting up a video podcast for under $100, and that stemmed from an interaction I had with another podcaster named David Hooper, and that was done on Mastodon or on the Fediverse. And in response to that thread, I got a comment from Todd Cochran, who is the CEO of Blubrry. Blubrry is a podcast hosting platform for audio as well as video. And he said, Bandrew, where is the RSS feed for your video podcast? If it's just on YouTube, sorry, it's just a video on YouTube. That interaction went on quite a bit more, and Stephen Jondrew and SP from Better Podcasting jumped in as well, and it may or may not have led to certain people being blocked by other people, which is absolutely hilarious to me. But my response to this, hey, you don't have an actual video podcast, it's just a video on YouTube. Fine by me. I could not care less whether or not a CEO of a company that earns money from video podcast hosting labels me a video podcaster or not. I have been publishing the audio version of this podcast for the entire life of it, before I started publishing video. I have been publishing audio podcasts for over 10 years. And also, I am not going to start every single show by saying the following, and I did have to write this down because it is such a mouthful. Let me take a deep breath. Today on the I Guess I'm Not a Podcaster Says podcast, if you're listening to the audio version of this show that's distributed via RSS, but if you're watching the identical content that's displayed through video but only available on YouTube, then I guess it's not a podcast because you can't actually download it via RSS in your podcatcher. Also, you should probably just ignore the fact that the average consumer has come to the view that podcasts are synonymous with any form of long-form spoken word content. We'll be discussing blah blah. That's not a catchy intro, and I just lost the entire audience, so I'm not going to add a bunch of qualifiers. The video version of this show, the video podcast, is identical in content to the actual audio podcast, which is available via RSS in any podcatcher, in any RSS reader. But let's explore why I refuse to have a video RSS feed for this podcast, why I refuse to have an actual video podcast. Number one, I don't want to pay for the hosting and bandwidth to distribute 4K video files. My last episode was a bit longer than usual at an hour long, but it was also 24 FPS as opposed to 30. That video file was 21 gigabytes. 21 gigabytes for one video. Let's see how much it would cost to host that, to distribute it, and we'll assume the video file was only 10 gigabytes. So I get about 1,000 views on the low side each episode of this show. So let's say 1,000 views times 10 gigabytes, that's 10,000 gigabytes. To find the cost of this, I went ahead and looked up bandwidth costs. I found Azure, which is Microsoft's hosting platform, and they quote, for North American and European distribution, the cost is 2 cents, 2 US cents per gigabyte. I should note that only 40% of my audience is in the US, so this is going to be a best case scenario in terms of costs. So 10,000 gigabytes times 2 cents per gigabyte leads to $200. $200 in bandwidth costs per episode. I publish 4 episodes a month. That means my monthly cost to host this podcast and distribute this podcast would be $800. $800. Do you know how much I pay to host and distribute the audio version of this show? $20 a month. Do you know how much I pay to host this on YouTube and distribute it via YouTube? $0. Therefore, the cost to have a proper video podcast would increase my hosting cost by 40x. I would 40x my cost just to meet the standards of being a real video podcast. No, absolutely not. But let's explore what I'd get out of publishing that video via RSS, because maybe there's a bunch of benefits. Maybe that $800 a month, let that sink, $800 a month. Maybe that $800 a month is going to give me a bunch of benefits. First up, no inbuilt discovery or algorithm. Podcatchers only offer search, and the search in most of these podcatchers are terrible. And I don't know anybody who goes into podcatchers, podcast apps, and says, hey, what about this topic? I am looking for, what polar pattern do I use on my microphone? People do not go to podcast apps to search for answers. They go there to search for podcasts they already know exist. So there's very minimal, if any, discoverability, and there is no algorithm. Secondly, I probably would get significantly fewer viewers because not many people know that video podcasts are actually a thing, that you can download video via an RSS feed. So my viewership would likely decrease tremendously. So let's go ahead and say the cost per month would be $200 as opposed to $800. And now I'm only getting 250 views per episode. That's just a bunch of assumptions, and I'm pulling numbers out of thin air. Third, the analytics. Oh, but podcasting has IAB certification, so the analytics are great. Maybe, but you are not getting the in-depth analytics that you get with a YouTube video. Where did people watch? Where did they skip over? Where were your viewers from? How did they discover the video? What were they watching prior to this? What other videos are they watching? All of the information that YouTube gives would be lost. And if you are an analytics fiend, you can make a lot of informed decisions with that data. So by going the RSS route, you would lose all of that. Also, no inbuilt monetization for donations or contributions, unless, of course, I onboard to Podcasting 2.0, which it seems kind of difficult, and I don't know if Podcasting 2.0 is compatible with video versions of the RSS feed, although I think Podcasting 2.0 just gets built into the RSS feed, so it may be there. So I'll go ahead and scrap that one. Maybe there would be an easy way to accept contributions if you use Podcasting 2.0. But I think the user base who knows about Podcasting 2, the actual consumer of podcasts who know about Podcasting 2.0, is pretty minimal compared to YouTube, where there is a big button that says donate, super thanks, subscribe. All those functions are very easy to locate, and it doesn't take a bunch of research on the listener or the viewer side. It is very easy to access those features. So I think the monetization side of things, the argument would still be there, that monetization is much more difficult in terms of contributions and donations. And lastly, in my opinion, the most important aspect that I would be losing essentially by going video RSS is no inbuilt engagement. That's why I started uploading a video version of this podcast to YouTube. Engagement. I had to go into Libsyn and look at my download analytics because I never do. For the audio version, I get about 400 downloads per episode. I think it used to be around 500, but it's down to 400. Guess how much engagement I get. Guess how many emails I get from people who just listen to the audio. Maybe one email every 6 months. Maybe one Ask Bandrew submission every couple of months, because that has even stopped. But if we look at YouTube, I get 1,000 to 1,200 views per video, so 3x the audience. But as far as the engagement, my comments will be from 20 to 40 per episode. That is significantly better in terms of engagement. And that is one of the most important aspects of this show. One of the most rewarding things that I get out of it is actually hearing from you. And if I were to meet this standard of being a video podcaster, I would lose that. So what would the point of all this additional work be? I don't think it would exist. I don't think it would be worth it. But let's talk about what I would actually gain from posting a video via RSS by actually becoming a proper video podcaster. 1, I wouldn't be at the whims of YouTube's moderation. That's about it. That is about it. What about competition? I'm bringing this up because I went back to the New Media Show, which is Todd Cochran's podcast with Rob, who used to work at Libsyn, and they talked about YouTube and podcasting. And in that episode, which I will link for you if you want to check it out, they discuss that podcasting and video podcasts in particular have significantly less competition than YouTube channels. I disagree with that. First, let's look at the stats. As far as podcasts, according to podcastindex.org, there are 4.25 million RSS feeds. Not all active, but 4.25 million. As far as YouTube channels, that is 113 million YouTube channels, and I got that from Global Media Insight. So yes, there are many fewer podcasts in comparison to YouTube. But where is the difference? There is no discoverability, there is no algorithm in podcasting. So you rely solely on word of mouth or on search results, search engines, SEO, which is something that they said. Hey, you just need to be better at SEO. That was in the thread on Mastodon, on the Fediverse. Hey, I do great. I do great with SEO and I get a bunch of traffic that way. My response to that means you aren't just competing with 4.3 million podcasts. You're competing with every single website on the internet to get high search ranking. And how many websites are there on the internet? There are a lot more than YouTube channels. The lowest number I found was from Siteify. Again, I will have all these sources linked in the episode notes. 1.1 billion. So I don't think the competition argument holds any water as a benefit for creating a video RSS feed, because now instead of competing against 113 million YouTube channels, you are now competing against 1 billion websites to get surfaced in search engines. So I don't think that holds any water. So the only real benefit we get is moderation or lack thereof. You aren't at the whims of another company's moderation. If you are somebody controversial and you are building a business, that may be enough for you. That may be enough. But for a hobbyist like me, I don't think so. So to summarize, if I were to go the route of video podcasting in the technical term to meet the definition of this, what would I be doing? What would I be gaining? What would I be sacrificing? Number 1, I would be 10xing to 40xing the cost to host this show, making it cost $2,000 to $8,000 a year, as opposed to the $240 that I pay right now. Secondly, I would potentially be 10xing the competition by competing against 1 billion websites and search engines versus the 113 million YouTube channels. I would be losing all discoverability and algorithmic push of my show to new listeners and have to go back and revert to my punk rock days of only growing via word of mouth. I'd have to go to all these podcasting conferences and flyer outside. Hey, come to my show this Saturday. $5 a ticket. I'd have to go back to my punk rock days. I'm too old to be a punk rocker, man. I can't do that. I don't have that energy. And it would be killing the engagement on this show, so I would get significantly less feedback. I'd have to eliminate a large portion of this show because it does rely heavily on audience comments, audience feedback, audience questions, audience pushback. Hey, Bandrew, you're an idiot. So this show would get a lot shorter. And I know there's some people out there saying, please do a video RSS feed, please do a video RSS feed because you talk too much. But I don't want to. I like that feedback. I like the comments. I like people pushing back. So for hobbyists and even most professionals, it simply does not make financial sense, in my opinion, to add this massive cost to your distribution bill with almost zero upside. As I think I already alluded to this, but if you're super controversial, if you violate TOS and policies, or if you're concerned about that, if you're edgy, I get it. You don't want to get banned and lose all of that work, all of that audience. But for most of us, we don't fall into that category. Most of us likely don't expect policy to change to the point where saying, hey, here's what happened on YouTube today. Hey, here are my thoughts on this microphone. Most of us don't see a day where talking about microphones will get you banned. I did almost lose my YouTube channel, though, with 300,000 subs, and still, even though I almost lost a decade of work, 300,000 subs, I still don't see a benefit in adding an $8,000 annual cost to this podcast. I don't see it, and I should be a prime candidate because I almost lost a decade of work. 300,000 subs on this channel. I almost lost it because of a stupid moderation mistake by YouTube. Do you know what I thought when that happened? That's a bummer. I guess I have a lot more free time. But I don't view this as a job. I still have my day job. For the vast majority of us, I just don't think it makes sense. So if not publishing an RSS video feed means I'm not a video podcaster in the eyes of somebody who runs a video podcast hosting service who would financially gain from me starting a video podcast RSS feed, that's fine by me. I don't care. The opinion of one person is not worth the thousands of dollars it would cost me to appease them, to meet their definition of a video podcast. The people who matter to me the most, the average consumer, the people who would listen to this show, already view what I do as podcasting. Because people have conflated video podcasting, which in some people's eyes is only video distributed via RSS, with any form of long-form spoken word content. Any long-form spoken word content, that's a video podcast. So in their eyes, this still is a podcast. To certain CEOs, it's not. That's fine. All right, I have a bunch of links in the episode notes and description. Couple of new media show episodes, couple of sources that you can check out. I'll also throw the Fediverse thread in there, and it still cracks me up that somebody got blocked because of it. It's a beautiful thing. I love to see it.